What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, host of The How To Show, where we talk about optimizing life, money, and happiness one how-to at a time. On this week's show, I'm going to do my best to talk over the thunderstorms that are going on outside, but I've got a really cool special guest for this week. His name's Riley Hitchcock. He and I met through a past employer, but that's also a past employer of his as well. And I want to tell Riley's story of the opportunity to pivot in career in such a way that gives new opportunities to you. And I really want to dive into his story about how he went from being in commercial real estate leasing to now working for a tech company. It's not lost on anybody that there's a lot of unemployment and frankly a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. And so giving this sort of story on how to make a career pivot, I think is valuable so that you can see that what Riley did is replicable. And I don't want to give too much of his story away, so without further ado, let's switch over and bring on Riley. Riley, welcome to the How To Show.
Anthony, super pumped to be here. Excited for this. First time doing one of these, so hope I can get back where I can.
Fantastic, my man. So we're going to spend some time talking about how to make a career pivot, but in order to understand that better, we need to know a little bit of where you came from and how you got started in your career so that we know where you started and we'll later know where you ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of great to be having this conversation because this isn't kind of the first move I've made. Just generally went to school in Florida. Had a rough go at it after my second or third year. Had to take some time off, really reevaluate. I think a lot of folks have that kind of experience going through college. Took 2 years, thought I knew it all, did some odd jobs, and finally kind of corrected course, if you will, and went back to school, hunkered down, felt like I was an old man amongst all the 18 and 19-year-olds at 21, and busted my butt for a year and a half. Finished my degree, got in sport management, had an internship with the Golf Channel, was super pumped, grew up playing golf, dream job, but realized real quickly that sitting in an office, not talking to people, putting numbers into a computer was not overly exciting. It was not me. Made a pivot to chase my brother a little bit in golf and kind of just chase the dream. That gets expensive quickly, so made the pivot into real estate. My mom was in the hotel business, timeshares growing up. A girl I was dating at the time was in the business, and I said, I can do this. Let me go get my real estate license. I'll take a shot at it, and let me run with this. So that was kind of the first big move into the business, and just really had to teach myself. Worked for a small brokerage, cut my teeth, showing small shop space, handling cold leads, knocking on doors, and was able to really parlay that into an opportunity at Sembler in St. Petersburg. And I like to call it that opportunity because that interview was interesting. I'd only been in the business for a year and a half, really had no experience, but made it a point to drive all the way from Orlando to St. Pete to meet with the hiring manager. And I really think that was a watershed moment because he said, listen, this kid's hungry, he wants it, and we'll teach him. From there, I really kind of scaled up there. Parlayed that into a job with Westfield, spent some time doing kiosks, specialty leasing, the carts and things you see in the mall for those that walk the mall. Wanted to make a move back into permanent leasing, jumped to DDR at the time, and spent 2 years there, and then was with Simon for about 18 months before really making that complete shift into technology.
Got it. So you've been playing with, at least for the last several years, we're talking big companies. And so your experiences have really started to influence some of the things that you were able to do. So talk to me, what was the most rewarding part about the whole real estate experience as a job function? What'd you like to do? And talk to me about how it went.
Yeah, I think it was really the relationship piece. I still remember my first deal in the business was with a dog salon. And a groomer. She was working in a local dog salon, wanted to open her own store, worked with her on the rent and the terms, signed the lease even at her house, in her own living room. And I'll never forget that today. So that's really what I enjoyed about it, was all the relationships I built. I enjoyed working for the small brokerage, 5-man shop. I got the experience working for a privately held developer and assembler. Really had a lot of clout in the business, a 50-year-old company, but then got that experience really from each vertical when you're working for the Westfields and Simons in the world, collaborating with tenant coordination, with operations, with management, with finance and legal. And I think that as you're progressing, don't discount the opportunity to go work for a major corporation, even if you find your niche is a little bit more tailored toward the smaller organization. But really, it was those relationships, Gary, and the ICS events. Who doesn't like those? I feel bad that our brethren in the business are going to miss out on those this year.
Sure. So the opportunities to meet people and get things done, completely understand why that would be intriguing to you. So when push comes to shove, you end up making a career change and you get yourself into big tech. And so how did that start to happen? What were the writing on the wall that you wanted to make a change, and how specifically did you settle on a tech job?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's such a cataclysmic shift, but no difference than it was making the move from a sports-related job to real estate. I think it was at Westfield, probably in about 2006, 2015, that I kind of just started to feel the dynamic of retail really beginning to change. And not only that shift due to the e-commerce piece that everybody was talking about, but really at a macro level, I started to look at, we're really there's too much retail space in America. Retailers were overstored. Those retailers that had been opening hundreds of stores a year weren't doing it anymore. The mom and pops were kind of going away. Downward pressure from rents. You got compressing margins. Just a ton of things from a macro level. But I think a real watershed moment was when I made that move to DDR, April 2017. We got new leadership. We were expecting the company to really grow, take a turn. It was on a downward trend. We were selling properties. We really thought this new leadership that came over was gonna right the ship. And within the first month, they laid off 70 people. And that to me was kind of that aha moment of this is tough. This is gonna get tough. And I knew the bloodshed wasn't going to end there. And I said I need to be thinking about where my career is going to go for the next 30 years. So that was really kind of the impetus for starting to think about that change.
Got it. That's good stuff. So when you start to think about moving into a new industry, did you rely back on relationships of different sorts? How did you find yourself in a level of proximity to the business that you were looking to go toward?
Yeah, I kind of look back that I've grown up in this era that's massively transitioning, right? I was 16 when 2000 hit. And I think back to the dot-com era and all of this, of the internet becoming a thing, technology and all the automation. I just remember training sales reps, moving from a manual written ticket slip to a digital POS system at 16, 17 years old, training people that were 2 or 3 times older than me. I thought that was pretty cool. But really, I've always had a passion for the Salesforce product. I use it across Westfield, use it across DDR. I was actually fortunate enough to meet a man named Greg Olzik, who at the time was with Oracle. This is back in probably about 2014 when I was with my wife. He's one of her good friends' dads, and really got to know him at a few functions and events. Small talk, in passing, but then it was kind of at that point where, hey, let's have a little bit more conversation. I learned he worked for Salesforce. I wore him out for 3 hours. That was probably back in 2016. I told him my passion for the product, how it helped me become extremely successful as a salesperson. And so we just started discussing opportunities at Salesforce. At that moment, I was doing well with DDR. Even after the layoffs, I was number 2 leasing rep for the year in 2017. I was number 1 in first quarter of 18. And then I got the axe in April 2017. Even as successful as I had been, I knew at that moment that it was really time to try to make a shift. So I called Greg. We had been talking about an opportunity. He said, I don't have anything for you right now, but I can get you an interview. He did that. Unfortunately, it was one of those things where I didn't have 3 or 4 months to wait. As a man with 2 young kids, a wife not working. I needed something immediately. So, but I think I want to elaborate on this a little bit more to the importance of those relationships I've built. I made 2 phone calls. I had 2 interviews with 2 of my former bosses from Westfield. The next week, I made that post on LinkedIn. It garnered a lot of interest. I at least was able to kind of make that move to Simon, stay in the business. It was tough to transition my family to Atlanta, but it worked out.
So I think that what we can draw from this is that using relationships that you've already built are going to continue to at least pay some sort of dividend, in the sense that when somebody meets Riley, they don't meet him for one day. There's an everlasting opportunity to reconnect with those folks.
Absolutely. And I think about that opportunity when I connected with Greg. The opportunity wasn't there, but what I did, I kept looking, I kept applying, I kept wanting to make that move to Salesforce. I kept it top of mind. And it just happenstance back in August of last year. Greg posted he had an opportunity on his team. I made the phone call. He said, perfect, I can get you through to HR. I can get you to the interviews. You're going to have to really step up because this is a role that's somewhat sales supported, but it's also very technical in nature.
Okay, let's build on that a little bit more. So when you were in commercial real estate, you were a Salesforce user. And so how does that necessarily translate from being a Salesforce user to being somebody that works on the Salesforce team? Are you already inherently qualified for those types of skills because you're familiar with the product? Or is there some sort of training that you had to do to get yourself qualified? Just walk me through how somebody might be able to replicate the types of things that you did.
I think very specifically, I love the product and I love being a power user of it. I found kind of a niche there, and I partnered with my Salesforce admins at both Westfield and DDR to kind of get a little bit more access, go a little bit deeper in the product, understand the technical side of it a little bit. But when I went through that interview process, I kind of had to lean on the value I was going to bring historically. All of those things that I learned as a salesperson, all that relationship building, all those skills that really I could carry over, and then kind of really sell myself on, I'm a lifelong learner. I got my MBA, I went back to school. I chose that over the CCIM or an MSRE, really because I saw myself transitioning at some point. But I knew that would be more valuable and more flexible if I ever really decided to make that career change. And I can tell you, I probably wouldn't be at Salesforce if it wasn't for that, because it really spoke to my desire to continue as a lifelong learner.
That's a fantastic answer to that, and I can completely understand where you're coming from. As a career changer myself, currently in an MBA program, I get the same sort of sentiments there. Is just to continue to make yourself maybe 1% better than you were yesterday, several percent better than you were the year before. It's all a snowball effect of experiences that can get you opportunities, maybe beyond what you may have even dreamed about a couple of years ago.
You're absolutely right, Gary. And I've heard all the arguments, as I'm sure you have, of why are you getting your MBA? It's a waste of money. It's not going to get you anywhere. The ROI is not going to be there. And my really biggest piece of advice to those naysayers, or to anybody out there, is whatever your median is, whether it's an MBA, certificates are becoming overly popular. You can do 3 or 4 classes. Is it a conference? Is it a 2-day personal development or career development program that you go through? My personal goal was to get an MBA when I went back to my undergrad, so that's the direction I took. But moral of the story is just be a lifelong learner, whatever median you choose.
Absolutely. And I think that if you can take an approach of being a lifelong learner and multiply that by the fact of maintaining lifelong relationships, you can get some economies of scale there that are way bigger than maybe focusing on either one individually.
Absolutely. And coming over to Salesforce, I knew I was going to be a little bit of the underdog. And, I think everybody can appreciate that desire to dive in, learn something new, carry over all those skills that they had, but not be afraid to embrace change. I've always had this mantra of change is inevitable, you might as well embrace it. So to be kind of status quo, stagnant, thinking things aren't going to get shook up, and then you're not going to have to be dynamic, is a mistake.
Yeah, I think that's completely relevant, especially in the state of the world we're in right now. We're seeing unemployment numbers that just continue to top charts each and every week when those numbers are published. And so being able to make these sorts of pivots and to sell your previous skills as new opportunities or ways to transfer them, I think it's really positive. So talk to me a little bit about what you're doing right now for Salesforce and maybe how you're using some of the skills that you had in your day-to-day life now.
Yeah, I think it's really important to highlight Salesforce's team selling environment. So although we have account executives that are more those frontline sales persons, you've got folks like me in a sales engineer or solutions engineer role. A little bit sales, but a little bit technical. So really have to be kind of product experts, but are there really kind of driving those C-level conversations, really understanding the business processes, mapping those back to our solutions, and being the technical experts, but also really being that trusted advisor that those businesses are looking to, and that you need that relationship and that rapport and understand how that works. So not being so introverted that you're so technical, you're so programmatic, but understanding that you need to understand how to manage relationships, how to build those, how to build that trust, I think was a big thing that I can lean on. And I can tell you I've had to run hard and fast at reskilling. I've managed to achieve a couple Salesforce certifications in my 8 months with the company. It's similar to a real estate certification. I'm sure we're all used to those 60-hour classes, go take a state exam. But I think it kind of validates, that you're moving in the right direction and you're trying to skill up in a systematic way.
Got it. And I think it's worth noting that you were able to get an opportunity to show what you can do with this company maybe before you got some of those certifications, and just as a good faith effort that they were willing to take a chance on you and you were willing to learn. I think ultimately it worked out well for everyone.
No, it certainly has. And I kind of came in with it because Greg gave me that opportunity. I said, I'm not going to let somebody down. But in addition, because I've been given that opportunity, I certainly want to get back. I'm mentoring a young kid out of Chicago. He's in an MBA program at Northwestern, but he has a passion for the product. He wants to learn it. He wants to get in with Salesforce. Listen, we take 1 million applications a year, but I want to try to get back. So if I can take a phone call, give somebody a piece of advice, give them some direction, try to help them get an interview, I'm here. I want to do that because folks have done it for me.
Absolutely. I've heard before that if you manage to climb the elevator of success, be sure to send the car back down afterward. And I think it's absolutely appropriate.
I love that.
Absolutely. So talk to me about your family life a little bit. You mentioned kids. When you start to think about a complete career change, I think personally that having the support of your family or those that are around you that are basically speaking love into your life are important to make sure that you're having those conversations to ensure that you're going to have the support you need when making a big transition like this. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's certainly something you've got to take into consideration, but you really kind of need to take stock of where you're at and your not only your professional life, but your personal life. How are they intertwined? We're becoming so much more, it's not work-life balance anymore with technology, it's work-life blend. So it's really understanding how is your professional life affecting your personal, and what does that look like? And I can tell you that it was challenging when we first moved to Atlanta. I had an hour and a half drive to the office, an hour and a half back. I was leaving before my kids would wake up. I'd sometimes be home when they were asleep. And, that really ate into the dynamic. No matter how good or bad of an opportunity it may have been, I think I really took a lot of value and said, even making this transition into technology where I'm going to have to take a little bit of a step back, going to have to take a little bit of a pay cut, but the gain that I'm going to get from having the ability to work home, be around my kids when they wake up in the morning, be there to talk to them at night, be there for dinner, I think, really says that they were supportive of that, even if we were going to have to make a little bit of adjustments in lifestyle. But it meant so much more at this point in my life than trying to jockey to climb the corporate ladder. And, I think I'm doing great personally and professionally. That's all I can say.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame that, is that you have to understand what's important to you in order to start to frame what sort of moves that you make like that. And so I think that what you did there is commendable. But if we were to think about this a different way over the course of not one career pivot, but 2 career pivots, if there was something that you wish you would have learned ahead of time, or some experience that you wish maybe would have gone a different way, what experience could you have probably given to your past self, or maybe somebody that's listening that's about to go into this experience of making a career pivot? What's something that you needed to know that you didn't?
Yeah, I really took a page out of Gary Vee's book, and hate him, love him or hate him, he's got some good advice. And one thing he told me that really resonated about a year and a half ago was, don't spend 2 years at a company within the first 2 weeks you shouldn't be at. And I think that you've really got to take a lot more stock when you're looking at organizations and interview them. Don't go work somewhere just because you think it's the place to be or because it's the mothership and you're going to make more money, because I can tell you culture is becoming so much more important, from a professional life, from a personal life. Uh, just evaluate the companies you're looking at is what I would say. Don't let the almighty dollar blind you.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I can see where in a situation like we might be in now, where jobs may be hard to come by, or at least job openings. But I think it's important that you still want to frame the hunt in such a way that you are interviewing the company that you're about to work for as much as they are interviewing you, to make sure it's a good fit. And so I think that's great advice. And so as an overarching thought to this sort of conversation that we're having, is what you did, Riley, is it replicable? Can somebody else do what you did?
I absolutely say yes. I will say it took me time. It took reaching out to those relationships. It's almost crafting a little bit of a plan B. If you're thinking about making that pivot, find out how you can skill up. Find out how you can, maybe again, it's a certification. Maybe it's a 9-month class. Maybe it's a degree program, whatever that is. Don't be afraid to get out there and skill up in that regard. And then go to those industry events. Find the ones that are local to you. Obviously, we're in interesting times right now, but I know there's a lot of things going on virtually. And just build those relationships, network, LinkedIn, Twitter, however you're going to do it. But really make it a point to formulate that plan B. Don't get so focused on woe is me and plan A. And then, you kind of get thwarted in a time like this where the world seems to be falling apart and you're scrambling for what that plan B could be.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely replicable. You can absolutely go out there, reskill yourself. Everybody's smart. There's the resources are there. There's a lot of free trainings. There's a lot of ways to do it. Where there's a will, there's a way, right, Gary?
That's right. And I think that you continue to hit on some key takeaways from this episode, is that you continue to be a lifelong learner. You continue to be a lifelong connector of people, and the two will multiply together. And so that's really great stuff. And so, Riley, what do you think about switching gears a little bit with me now? We're going to take a pivot in this episode. And for the first time ever, we're going to do some rapid style questions. Are you ready for the how-to cues?
Let's rock and roll.
All right. Question number 1. What is the best book you've read in the last 12 months?
The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I picked that up probably about the first of the year. I read the Eaters Eat Last and Start With Why from him, so it's just a natural progression to read that. It's really just about thinking about the long game. Don't get so short-sighted, and worry about next month or next quarter, but think about how you're playing that long game, both in your personal and professional life. Highly recommended.
You bet. And I'll link to that book in the show's notes, and basically everything that Simon touches turns to gold. He's like the King Midas of our modern day. So that's a great recommendation. So question 2, give me one podcast you're subscribed to.
I am subscribed to the Action Network. It's pretty much everything sports and fantasy. I love the golf podcast with Peter Jennings and Steve Sobel, and they bring in some of the PGA Tour players when sports is actually going on. But that's my when I do go to the office, that's what I put on. It's fun to listen to. So
awesome. All right, question 3. What is the best purchase of recent memory for less than $100 that you've made?
I got my kids 2 new life jackets. They've had those little orange ones, and they got to pick out their pink one for my daughter, and my son got like a blue and red one, and they're just loving it. So that's whatever makes them happy, that makes me happy.
That's fantastic, and that's got memories built in it for years. Awesome. What time did you get up this morning?
I got up at 7 a.m. That's usually kind of my cue. I'm not a morning person. I'm a night owl. I'll stay up till 11, 12, 1 o'clock sometimes. Admittedly, my son came in and laid with me this morning, so I was there until about 11:15.
Awesome. What color is your toothbrush?
It's white. It's an Oral-B electric. I don't know how long I've had it.
All right. This is just for fun, just to see how many people actually know the answer to that question. And my final question, if anyone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me at Riley Hitchcock. I'm on Twitter at Dopey1Solution. That's the number one. And then, email me, call me. My info's out there. I'm happy to help, happy to connect, happy to just chat.
Awesome, Riley. I appreciate you joining me on the show.
Anthony, appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
All right. Special thanks again to Riley Hitchcock for joining me on this episode of the show. That is going to bring this episode of the show to a close. As always, if you would subscribe to my channel, you can be the first to know about new content when it comes out. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when new videos hit each and every Wednesday. And if you haven't done it already, you know it's not too late to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It'll let people and YouTube know that this is a video that you got value from and it's a video worth watching. And if you have an idea for a future topic on the show, or you want to leave some comments on this episode of the show, please leave me a comment for all of those different types of things. I engage with all of my comments, and so it's a good place to have an interaction and let people know what you're thinking about the show. Until next time, this is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.